Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 890 for the 1st of August. As usual, Frontline Changes is already out on the main channel, so this is the situation report. And since then, there is one frontline change I want to highlight. There's one over at Zalizne, over in the New York front. So over the Thorax sector, the Thorax, and this Zalizne, and there's the new geolocation of Russian forces basically at the edge of Zalizne. So which means the Russians at least have captured these areas here to reach here. And so this is the new update, the latest update based on geolocation from Crimea Caprice. And that's it for the frontline changes. We go to the strategy and tactical reporting. And I would like to go in the anti-clockwise direction. We're going back to the anti-clockwise because I feel like the situations in Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Avdiivka, it's getting more important, and Kharkiv is really lackluster. So we're going to start from Kherson front. So at the Kherson front, we have the usual. We have shelling reported at Tokarivka and Antonivka. Russian forces allegedly attacking towards the Pokrovsk direction. But this is, of course, as usual, very only Ukrainian Defense Ministry talking about it. No one else is talking about it. So not exactly sure how big is this offensive. So Ukrainians have this, for those that do not know, have this bridgehead over in the opposite side of Dnipropetrovsk. So the Russians are somewhere. We are not sure exactly where. Maybe they are at Pishchanivka and are still trying to attack in. Maybe they have already taken all this area and they are trying to attack towards this bridgehead. The reality is that we do not know. So we shall wait for more information, but no one is talking about this, so though it's really hard to find information about this. Over at south of Rivka, there is a Russian airstrike being reported, and that's about it for the Kherson front. Moving up over at Osokorivka, there is shelling being reported by the Russian Defense Ministry in the opposite side of this peninsula, which I always say that if the Ukrainians want to do a landing onto this area, this is a good place to pick. So, but no, because the Russians have always been shelling Zolota Balka and Osokorivka. These two locations is prime target for Russian strikes, which means that the Ukrainians are thinking about it, but they have no guts to really try it, because once you go in, you don't do much, then you die. So they have been holding back. So they don't want to do a crinky around here, and then they just keep getting struck by the Russian forces. We move into the Zaporizhia front. Over at the Zaporizhia front, we have continued offensive in this area. We're fighting reported at Pyatikaki towards Orikhiv, over at Malatomashka and Robotine. So the Russians are still putting pressure on the Ukrainian forces over in the Zaporizhia front. We move further away from the Zaporizhia front over in the Donetsk front. At the Velika Novosilka sector, we have Russian forces attacking towards Storozheve as well as Zolota Neva. So this is the only thing that we have. Previously, the Russians were pushing around at Uruzhaine, but this was not reported. And previously, there was another one over at Rivnopil, also not reported. So this is what we have right in here. We move into the Konstantinivka sector, or the Vodian sector. I'm not sure what I want to call this yet. So basically, the Russian forces are pushing towards Vodian, or they're pushing towards the highway. And they're attacking towards Konstantinivka and at Paraskovievka. Geolocation of Ukrainian forces getting hit in the south of Konstantinivka by Russian airstrikes show Ukrainian presence, of course, defending Konstantinivka. However, what's the shocking thing is the Russians raised a flag along the highway in a entrenched position, and basically confirm Russian presence in this area here. In the video footage is by a drone footage, so the Russian soldiers probably have planted something, planted the flag on some of this debris. I believe it's a car or something. I can't remember what was it. And a drone was flying around here, taking the footage around of this area here. It looks very deserted, which means that Ukrainian forces are all in hiding, but the Russian forces are also not shown to be taking any chances. So the Russian forces are moving in this direction. Is a capture, but it's also no guarantee that the Russians may be there, Ukrainian forces may actually retake the positions because the Russians are not entrenched in that position. But in modern warfare, the reality is that before the Ukraine war, we have always said, entrenchment are just open targets. And only in this war that we got surprised that people still go into entrenchment and then get shelled. So yeah, but this is what the reality is. We shall continue to monitor. There's now no reports of anything at Boyeda and Georgievka region. And Krasnohorivka, there is still fighting reported in the battle of Krasnohorivka. But we have no reports regarding the details, so we shall wait for intel drops. We move into the Adivka front. So at the Adivka front, we over in the southern flank, we have the usual Russian forces attacking in Yasno-Brodivka region and Khalivka. We have no updates regarding anything over in this sector. Anyway, this is not the main push. The main push is towards Pokrov. So over in this Pokrov, I would say Pokrov sector, Russian forces are attacking in the area of Pokrovsk, Ivanivka, Vasily, Sergeyevka, Zeleny, south of Voschev and Novoselivka, Persia. And particularly, we have massive frontline changes of Russian forces entering Ivanivka, capturing Vasily, and basically cutting Sergeyevka and Zeleny apart from each other with this frontline change. This means that the Russian forces have continued to move down this railway, and they're probably going to head towards Novorodivka or Novogorodivka at this situation. But with the capture of Vasily, the Russian forces could also attack into Gorodivka, which is what I call the first boss of the three bosses. So who are the three bosses around here is Gorodivka, Minograd, as well as Pokrov. This is the three bosses of Pokrov, and Russian forces can take the first boss, second boss, then they will take the big boss. Of course, then we have this new third boss over here. Russians could also attack it, but it's a bit further away because the Russians still have to capture Sergeyevka, Zeleny, Novozeleny, and then Mykolaievka, Olivka. Then they reach Novogorodivka. So I'm not sure which path that the Russians would take. It looks like to go to Pokrov, going through Gorodivka might be the fastest way. But the Russians may desire this railway line. You see, if you have the railway line leading all the way to Pokrov, imagine how useful that is going to be in terms of resupplying and setting up a forward operating position. So that will be disastrous. So with this latest change, the Pokrov from the nearest point, the furthest point the Russians have arrived is around 16.5 kilometers of Vasily. So 16.5 kilometers, say long, not long, say short, not short. So we shall see how this develop in this region. So the capture of Vasily is reported by the Ukrainian sources. So this is not Russian propaganda. This is Ukrainian propaganda. And the of significance, of course, is the capture of this heart-shaped fortification from in the south of Voschev. And with this latest update, Russian forces is now in range to attack into Zeleny from the east, and they are already poised to be able to attack from the north. And then now with this cut through the railway line, the Russians cannot attack from the west as well. Zeleny is now poised for a siege. The Russian forces, of course, with this cut, they can also enter into Sergeyevka, and with this entire tree line captured, the Russians can actually attack in multiple directions, basically depend on where they choose to attack. So for Vasily, of course, as I mentioned, allow them to attack into Gorodivka. So the four of these locations are way too fast. It's literally, as I have analyzed, that the Ukrainians indeed do not have a firm line of defense yet. They still have no idea where to build up that rigid line that can hold back the Russians. So where is the next line of defense? I have no idea. So ever since the fall of the progress line, so there's a progress line at Yekhanivka, around Novoselivka, I think it's something like this. And yeah, after this line fell, the whole thing just collapsed. So yeah, I'm not sure when they will be able to form the new line. If they are able to trap the Russians into a major urban battle at Gorodivka, maybe they have a chance to regroup and build a defense line behind But the problem now is that the Russians may not go for Khrudivka. They may actually just go for all the small ones, Olivka, Zuravka, Zelenia, then Krotivia, and then after that they just swing around, go to Mykolaiivka, cut into Promin, and they just totally just bypass Khrudivka. That's also possible, and the city would just be abandoned, just because they might be strategically encircled. So then if the Russians take this entire line of settlements is all captured, the Ukrainians will just panic and just redraw. There's a high chance that could happen. And as of course this includes the Russians continue to push in this direction towards Novotoresk. So which is a probable logical place to go because of the water body along the Kazeni Torex. So Russian forces taking this area here, forming a defense line, makes perfect sense. So a lot of it's quite interesting how this situation develops. There's so many possibilities, so we will continue to just monitor and see how this goes. Over in the northern flank, we have covered progress. So in the northern flank, other than the one that attacked in the Ivanivka, Russian forces are attacking at Timofeyevka, expanding the control over on the western part after the capture of Timofeyevka, and the fighting has already arrived at Zviridonivka. So this is reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry about the fighting over at Zviridonivka. And fighting is of course reported as usual at Vodizenka, Novoalexandrivka, and Kalinove. There is no reports about fighting at Arkhangelsk or Karamik. So yeah, that's about it. We move into the New York front. Over at the New York front, at the New York sector, Russian forces are attacking in the region of New York, Pentamolynivka, as well as Alexandropil. However, there is a geolocation that shows the Ukrainians have some success over in New York. In an assault in the south of the central part from the railway station, Ukrainian forces attacked Russian positions and captured some grounds. And they also captured some Russian soldiers. And with this capture, it's safe to say that the Ukrainians actually have secured the entire northern part of this river system around here. There's a river here. So I'm not sure if you can see, there's another way to see this. You can see this Krivy-Torex River. So this river leading all this way. So it looks like the Ukrainians may have control of the entire northern part of this northern bank of this river. There's a high chance this is the case. So with this geolocation and Ukrainian forces going into this area, I think that's most likely the case. So whether the Russians would want to cross over the river and then attack into the Ukrainian positions remains to be seen. The Russians are reportedly attacking still over on this southern bank, moving northward on the western part. So let's see how this developed over the New York front. Over at the Torex sector, Russian forces, as mentioned in the Frontline Changes report, has expanded control around Zalivne region. So fighting reported at Zalivne is usual over Torex and in Pivnishne region. So that's it from this area. So there is no more updates because we just have the intel drop yesterday, and based on geolocation and another geolocation in today. So we will probably see some major intel drop in a few days time. And as usual, it's likely to have a huge number of changes. So we move away from the New York front. Over at the Bakhmut front in the southern flank, we have fighting reported at Ivanivsky and Andriivka. So that's about it. Over in the Chasivya, the central flank, Russian forces is now starting to attack into this Zotneve region. And I believe that this name, they also have another name called Oktyabrski. This is based on the reporting from the Ryba. They call this the Oktyabrski micro district. There is no such place being mapped in my mapping. Based on OpenStreetMap's naming conventions, we don't really have such a place. So I believe it's Zotneve, but the old name of Zotneve, because Zotneve, I think it's a Ukrainian name and it's pretty new. Like it seems like one of those names that the Ukrainians have changed. So maybe that's the case. So whatever it is, Russian forces also were reported to be attacking Novi. So this is Novi. This is Zotneve. So Russian forces are attacking in these two different districts. And generally, of course, on Chasivia, because this entire area is Chasivia. So we shall continue to monitor. Personally, like I said, I'm not very convinced of a Russian attack on the deliberate capture of Chasivia. I don't feel it's necessary. But if they choose to do so, they will do so. Just like previously, I think that the Russians is pretty good with just holding Ivaniske, half of Ivaniske. I feel like there's no need for them to push through the forest, but they did it anyway. So, and due to this new reality that they have captured most of this area along the canal, I believe that they will just straighten the entire front line along the canal. But yeah, we shall see how this goes. Northern flank of Bakhmut, we have nothing. We move into the Sivas front. The Sivas offensive continues. Generally, the fighting is now in this area of Volkan-Okanyamske, Spurny, Ivano-Darivka, and towards Vimka. So the Russians are still pushing around this area here, and I'm not sure exactly where the front line have moved. There's no updates about that, so we just wait and see how this goes. We move on from the Sivas front. Over at the Kremina front, we have Russian forces attacking in the Serbiansky Forestry and Torske. So that's it. Further up north, there's a geolocation of Ukrainian forces getting hit by Russian artillery of Novosadove. Over at Makiivka, there's some updates. The Russian forces were reportedly attacking this area here. However, geolocation of Ukrainian forces invalidated Russian claims. So it doesn't mean that the Ukrainians attack. It could be just the Russian claim is wrong. So that's all from the Makiivka region. So which also means that this combined with the situation further up north. Where is it? I think it's Miazov-Zarivka region or further south. Yeah, I think it's that. So coupled with that shows that the Russian forces, despite they pushed through, they seem to be going to win the village, but they still redraw. I'm not sure if it's deliberate or is it that the Ukrainian defense are very good. So because it could be the case where this is a Russian strategy to just hit and run. Like they attack, then make it like a big crisis, and then they just abandon the village. Maybe they set booby traps and let the Ukrainians come back and get killed. That's also possible, because strategically speaking, they don't feel the need yet probably to capture all these areas. So that could be a possibility. Over at the Svetove front, Russian forces are attacking in Semakivka, towards Andreevka, and at Nadia. So this is the three locations that the Russians have attacked over in the Svetove front. So that's it. We move on. Over in the Kupiansk front, Russian forces are fighting in the Pivnishne region and Sinkivka region, and that's about it. Very little reports nowadays in the Kupiansk front. And previously there was all this report about fighting towards Kiev-Sharivka, Khrushchevka, Kolesnivkivka, but from Pivnishne. But yeah, nothing came out of it. Like I mentioned, while it seems very logical for us to think that the Russians now capturing Pivnishne, they should go for Kolesnivkivka or Krylyakivka, cut the front the crossing, going to Khrushchevka so that they can attack towards Kupiansk. It's natural for us to think that way, because we are only looking at this in the tactical sense in this region. But for the Russians, they may have a strategic objective of totally grinding out the Ukrainian forces in the existing lines, except for the various other front lines, like part of Donetsk front, in the Avdiivka front and the New York front. This place they are pushing, but the other front line, it seems like they are just there to grind out the Ukrainian forces. So despite the tactical situation that have developed around this area here, it might look like the Russians may attack, but they might just choose not to attack, and they just want to sit there and be a saw thumb, because this looks like a thumb here. This is the saw thumb, and to draw Ukrainian forces into trying to recapture Pivnishne. That's Pishani. So that is a possibility. So yeah, so we shall see how this goes, whether the Ukrainians will take the bait or not. It really remains to be seen, because the Ukrainians taking the bait could just be seen as the Ukrainians trying to counterattack, but it could also be the Russians setting up a trap for the Ukrainians to counterattack and get killed off. So no, it really depends on the perspective, the paradigm, your biasness. So I'm just putting out there that these are all possibilities. So over at the Sinkivka region, there is also some artillery shelling on Ukrainian forces at Sinkivka. So that's about it. You can see that the Russians have no interest of capturing Sinkivka. They just want the Ukrainians to keep coming into this area here. The Russian forces can capture Avdiivka, so many towns, villages over there, but can't capture Sinkivka. Very hard to imagine. So it feels very deliberate that they do not want it. So over at the Happy Front, at the Kharkiv Front, the Russian forces are still attacking across the 3 sectors. Over at Taikei, Voschansk, Staritsia, Lipsy, and Klipoke. So the Klipoke has returned in terms of the reporting. So there is some updates in the various sector. So Ukrainian forces is now getting struck by the thermobaric rockets over in Voschansk. So this is bad news, because any Ukrainian soldiers in the area of the explosions are going to be instant death. There is almost no way out, unless they have I would say nuclear bomb proof bunker, underground bunker under some of these buildings. Maybe they will survive, but otherwise, even inside the underground bunkers, they might still die from oxygen deprivation, because it will suck out all the air and instantly they all die, or maybe die of heat. It could be all sort of possible reasons. Over at Taikei, there is an airstrike. There's a continued airstrike. So Taikei has been the victim of a lot of airstrikes. Like again, I said, it feels like this is just a kill zone. They force the Ukrainians to cross the river over into Taikei and then get killed off. Like, there is a lot of this kind of locations, and the Ukrainians just can't resist entering plot of land that no Russians are sitting there. Like they just feel like, this is like coloring, right? There's some hole that is still not colored, you must color it. That kind of situation. So that's it from the Voschansk sector. At the Staritsia sector, there is a TOS strike as well. So there's a thermobaric strike over in Staritsia as well, and hitting Ukrainian positions in the center of Staritsia. So yeah, I wonder if all these thermobaric strikes are a sign of a possible offensive assault operation from the Russian side. I have no idea. And we move on. Over in the Lipsy sector, we don't have any other new updates other than the fighting at Klipoke and Lipsy. There's no change in terms of the tactical and strategic situation. Like I said, this is part of those front line that is deliberately there to be a mosquito, to be a diversion, to be this irritating thing that is there that you cannot ignore, but you should ignore, but you cannot also ignore it. It's the kind of a very conundrum situation for the Ukrainians to face. Anyway, that's it. Over at the Sumy region, there is one cross-border attack. So over at Pokrovsk, so the Russian forces crossed over and they attacked Ukrainian forces over in Pokrovsk. This is just just one hit and run or something, or some shelling. And this is the first time we have seen attacks or fighting over this area. So a lot of distractions all over the place. So being a border guard might not necessarily be better, because you are still seeing yourself maybe at the front line, particularly over the Sumy region. So anyway, that's it. So this is the situation report, or the summary for the day of 890 for the 1st of August. So thank you for watching. Press the like button, subscribe, help to boost DPA, and I'll see you guys in the next update.